Namaste, aloha, welcome to the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. My name is Janapati Das. Thank you very much. Please accept my respects, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Yoga Kirtan Hawaii. I'd like to take this moment to first offer my respects to my spiritual teacher and to my spiritual grandfather, who has translated and purported upon this Bhagavad Gita as it is, and we will be reading from tonight. So I offer my respectful obeisances to them, and we will be reading from the Bhagavad Gita tonight and commenting and reading the purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So please, thank you for tuning in. And please feel free to join in as we engage in some kirtan. Namo Siddhara Swarupname Paramam Sanamine Yoda Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krishtayate Namo Siddhara Swarupname Paramam Sanamine Yoda Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Krishnayate Namo Vishnudaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namo Vishnudaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaktavrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaktavrinda Bhaja Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaktavrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhaktavrinda Haribo Haribo Nitai Go Haribo Haribo Nitai Go Haribo Haribo Nitai Go Haribo Haribo Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Go, Hare Go, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Hare Go, Hare Go, Hare Go, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Hare Go, Hare Go, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Hare Go, Hare Go, Nitai Go, Nitai Go, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribo. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasade. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, welcome to the Bhagavad Gita, as it is Wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. And we are reading from the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, purported and translated upon by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's enough to take even a small portion or a verse, a verse or a little bit out of the Bhagavad Gita and talk about it and read it. Because the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Bhagavad Gita is about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our relationship with Krishna. So to take even a small part of it, and it's its own microcosm, and it's always fresh. Some things that we read and engage in daily, they might be attractive, they might be interesting to read, or you might be excited about something, and maybe new piece of music or whatever, and it seems seemingly fresh, but soon eventually the freshness fades. And this can be told by most things in the material world. For example, if you took something that you really like pizza, like you like a favorite food and pizza, or you like whatever, Billie Eilish or Beethoven, and you're like, oh, I just love them, and I long to listen to those things, and you were actually confined to a house for a month, couldn't leave, and all you could eat for a month, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, was pizza and listen to Billie Eilish or Beethoven. You might be like, oh, this is great, but after the third day of pizza and Billie Eilish, and you just be like, oh, it's just like hellish. So, like most things in the material world, those things that appear in our mind as potential object of enjoyment is not really actually something that will truly give us as spirit souls satisfaction and happiness. The Bhagavad Gita, however, the Song of God, Gita is song, and it is a song of God. It is a love song between the living entity, the Jivatma, and the Supreme Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, Sri Krishna. And this is an eternal relationship. It's an eternal song. And it is ever fresh. So we can take the Bhagavad Gita, and even though it was spoken 5,000 years ago, it's applicable and fresh, eternally fresh. In fact, it grows in its attractiveness as we take time to actually reflect upon the words of the Bhagavad Gita and the purport of the Bhagavatam Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is a pure devotee of Krishna. So the pure devotee of Krishna, the servant of Krishna, the pure servant of Krishna, and the Bhagavad Gita and the Supreme Bhagavan is non-different in that the fact that it is ever fresh and ever eternal and ever providing us with insight. Today what we're going to do is we will read chapter 6, from chapter 6, and we'll just read one verse and read the purport and reflect upon this. And as we know a little bit about the backstory of the Srimate Bhagavad Gita, we know that this is set on the battlefield of Kurukshetra before the great battle. And it is a conversation between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Supreme Bhagavan, and the Jivatma, or the living entity, or the devotee of Krishna, in this case Arjuna, who is the warrior about to fight the battle. So it is a true historical event that this Bhagavad Gita took place in. There was a battle of Kurukshetra, there was a Krishna, and there was an Arjuna. It's not a metaphor. There are a lot of commentaries and translations of the Bhagavad Gita that try to minimize the importance of the Sri Krishna or even this event as actually happening. But those are not commentaries that should be read, because the Bhagavad Gita as it is the Bhagavad Gita is about Sri Krishna. And so when we say it's entitled the Bhagavad Gita as it is, as Bhaktivedanta referred to it, it is about Krishna and our relationship with Krishna. So there should be no other confusion about, so many people have commentaries that say Krishna is representing this and Arjuna represents this and the battlefield represents this. So while there is an applicable meaning of Krishna imparting the spiritual knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita to his devotee Arjuna, it is a historical event. It is also applicable in our own life. So this is the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's not only a historical point, but it is an eternal conversation and relationship that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has with each and every one of us, all living entities on this planet, whatever form of life they may be in. And so we're going to read this conversation that Krishna is having with Arjuna, but Krishna is also having with us. And this is how his spiritual knowledge is imparted to us, is handed down. It's handed down from a spiritual teacher to the disciple or student. In this conversation, Krishna is the teacher, and Arjuna is the recipient of the spiritual truth. And it comes from an issue or some problem or some kind of dilemma in the case of Arjuna wanting to fight this battlefield. But we ourselves, as conditioned living entities in the material world, also have our dilemmas and our problems. And as my spiritual master would say, don't focus on the problem, focus on the solution. And the solution of the problem is Krishna. It is the Bhagavad Gita. And this is what Krishna conveys to Arjuna throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So we're going to read from text 47, chapter 6. This chapter is entitled Sankhya Yoga. And I'll just very briefly talk about a little bit, because I want to read the purport by Bhaktivedanta and not talk so much, but to understand the meaning of Sankhya Yoga, we must understand the words as they come. Sankhya Yoga is a word that is translated as connecting with the Supreme. And the activity of yoga, or the yogi, is a practitioner of this process. Now, that being said, if you've read the Bhagavad Gita, or if you read it, Krishna delineates many different kinds of paths that ultimately lead to Krishna, to our relationship with Krishna. But like most spiritual paths, or paths that are in this system of the Vedic system, there are, like a main road, a direct road, and there are many roads that kind of go off, and that can be understood that many spiritual practices in the material world are not necessarily direct paths. The direct path is reinstating our loving relationship with God. That's a very straightforward. Lord Jesus Christ taught it when he taught that you should love the Lord God with your whole heart and your whole mind, your whole being, and that was Bhakti Yoga. But there are many living entities in this material world. Why we are here, actually, because we want to not do the will of God. We want to be God, play God, whether or not that's calling ourselves God or just acting like God. So our type of surrender, and we are talking about surrender here to God, is conditional in many cases. And so the processes that Krishna explains that are set up very mercifully by God for the living entity who has decided that, I want to play God. There are these paths back to God, And some of them are very indirect, and they have a lot of conditions. So if you want to, enjoy in a certain propensity in the material world still, but you may have a little bit of, regulation to, get closer to God while still enjoying the material world. There are those paths, but it's likened to, if you want to go to, say I live in Hawaii, right? So if I want to take a flight from Honolulu to Tokyo, there can be a direct flight, right? It's quick, it's easy. Or you could get one of those cheap flights that they go down to Melbourne, or, or maybe you go to New York City and then you're going zigzaggy, and eventually you get to Tokyo, but you're taking all these different paths that take much longer and shorter. It's not as short and not as quick. So yoga is a way of linking yourself to God. Now there are different branches of yoga, and Shanka is one of them. And Shanka yoga, I don't want to get into, because that could be its own class, but Shanka yoga is the metaphysical understanding of the difference between spirit and matter, and who is the controller of both. So that's a very brief and this is the process of understanding that we find in another scripture called the Srimad Bhagavatam, which Kapila Dev, who is the incarnation of God, actually instructed his mother Devahuti on the science of Shanka Yoga. So that there's more to learn there. If you want to Google or look it up, I recommend Bhaktivedanta Swami, the teachings of Lord Kapila. It's an easier, shorter version, or you could read the Srimad Bhagavatam. But let's get back to the Bhagavad Gita. So that was briefly what Shanka Yoga is. And Krishna is talking to Arjuna here, and he says, of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. Let me read that again. So here Krishna is telling Arjuna, there are many paths, but if you want to be a yogi, then be a bhakti yogi. Be a yogi for me. And of all yogis, he who abides in me with great faith, worshipping me in transcendental loving service, is most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. And so certain words in here in the Sanskrit that is provided in these Bhagavad Gita as it is include the yogis, yoginam, and gatena. Mat means me, mine, right? Gatena is to be within with me, So God is within, God is in the heart, and to be dwelling or united in will with God, antaha atmana, within you, therefore seeing God, and you're also thinking about him. In this word Shraddhavan means full faith, right? It also is a word that means that has a reference to drawing closer. So when you have in faith of something, because you've seen the applicable results of being close to God, that it's drawing you towards him, you see the actual change in your life, you have faith that you're headed in the right direction. It's kind of like, if you've been in a cave for a long period of time and it's dark and you see a very small light, or somebody says, the spiritual master, for example, that's a good analogy that my spiritual master always talks about, that the torchlight of knowledge brings the torchlight of knowledge and says, this is the way out. So you have faith, okay, this person has some know, and you see that very pinpoint of light, and you start walking, you start getting drawn towards it because your life in this dark cave is terrible and you finally see light. It might be very small, might be kind of doubtful, but you're like, well, I'm going to head that direction. And then it becomes more and more bright, so you're having more and more faith. Worshipping me in bhajate is to... Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada sometimes translates bhajate as worship, but the English word for worship is also has sort of some baggage about it, like an on reverence kind of thing, like Almighty God, hallelujah. You know, it's like kind of on reverence. God is far away, but bhajate is not just worship; it's rendering transcendental loving service too. That's what he puts here. But he does translate it in the verse as worshiping me in transcendental loving service. So that's bhajate. Is most intimately united with me in yoga. That is the most intimate connection. Bhakti yoga is the highest of all. So let me read the purport by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its root in the word bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. So, as you know, famously coined by Bob Dylan, you know, there's a song he sung that's, you've got to serve somebody. It might be that's the name of the song. You got to serve someone. And he goes on about saying it might be the devil, it might be the Lord, but you got to serve someone. And so he's talking about all these people you serve. The living entity is by nature in service, and that service is most intimately united in the relationship with God, that the loving service that we've eternally been in existence with, but we've decided to back away from. But we want to be served in the material world. That is our sickness, but yet we have to do so much service to try to get to be served, right? So, for example, I might have a wife and she serves me some way, or I have children and they've served me some way, but I also have to serve them. I have to go to work. I have to make money. That is the type of service. I have to take care of my children. I have to go to work, and I'm in service for my boss. And they're in service to me by giving me money to do my job. So the service attitude is fluent. Most people are not like, whoopee. They're actually reluctantly serving people. But this form of bhajate is willingly loving service to God. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaja. So here Bhaktivedanta is saying that. Worship means to adore, or to show respect or an honor to the worthy one. Which is, there is an aspect of God realization that involves worship and awe and reverence. Some people have relationships with God that are, they have names of God that are more denoting fearfulness or wrath or some kind of pomp and circumstance, But the most intimate form, Krishna means the most attractive. One name of God is most attractive, and the most intimate relationship with God is the most attractive one. It's very intimate. It's one of love and service, and sometimes maybe the love is covered up a little bit in some relationships of God, depending on what the living entity, how they want to relate to God. Worship means to adore or to show respect and honor to the worthy one, but service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can avoid worshiping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous, but one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Failing to do this, he falls down. The Bhagavatam confirms this as follows. I'm going to attempt the Sanskrit here. Yasham Purusham Shakshad Atma Prabhavam Ishvaram Nabajanti avajananti stinad balashta pantani ada. So, excuse me, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but giving it my best attempt there. And that's translated as anyone who does not render service and neglect his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. And realistically, one is actually serving God either directly or indirectly. One is serving God either directly through loving service, or by neglecting, by not wanting to serve God, one is serving the external material energy, which is the energy of God. So either way, but it's better, it's more sweeter to actually, and better for you, to actually be serving Krishna directly. In this verse also, the word bhajanti is used. Therefore, bhajanti is applicable to the Supreme Lord only, whereas the word worship can be applied to demigods or to any other common living entity. The word avajananti, used in this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, is found in the Bhagavad Gita, avajananti mamujaha. Only the fools and rascals deride the Supreme Personality of God and Lord Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita without an attitude of service to the Lord. This is something that Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada talks about in the beginning of this. And when he hearkens at a time where somebody asked him before he translated this and purported upon it, if he knew of any English versions of Bhagavad Gita, and he said no, he couldn't think of it, even though there were so many that were translated. You can go to libraries or bookstores and you can see Bhagavad Gita translated by, Christopher Isherwood, or, this person or that person, or even, I think Oppenheimer actually even did a translation. So, but these are not, Bhaktivedanta titled his as it is, because the conclusions of these, for one, these translators, they may be very fluent in knowing Sanskrit and maybe even teach many world history classes or Eastern religion, at Harvard or whatever, but they actually fail to understand that the Bhagavad Gita means the song of Krishna. It means the song of God. It's about Krishna. And they have not realized this realization, and so therefore they rely on their own speculative information to try to say, well, this is what I think this means, and that's what I think this means. But even the Bhagavad Gita derides people who try to understand the absolute truth by using speculative knowledge, because that is a method by you trying to utilize your own mental intelligence to try to reach into the absolute truth, instead of realizing the absolute truth from Krishna, from the disciplic lineage of teachers. That is a descending process. So many times these speculative approaches of trying to understand the absolute truth are way off the mark. They come up with the craziest conclusions, and so it becomes more about the glory of that translator. Like, look at me. I can translate the Sanskrit. I can, purport upon this great literature, and their conclusions are not correct. In this verse, so only the fools and rascals deride the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita without an attitude of service to the Lord. Consequently, they cannot properly distinguish between the word bhajanti and the word worship. The culmination of all kinds of yoga practices lie in bhakti yoga. And this is what we were saying, is that there are many paths, there are many rules and regulations in the Vedic system, in the Varnashram system of the Vedas, of the Indian society. But they have they're different paths, right? They have different purposes and for different kinds of consciousness. And so this can be likened to a question that people get asked, people who sometimes wonder, maybe atheists, or they might say, well, why are there so many contradictions among the different scriptures of the world? And the answer to that is that in essence, the conclusions of these different scriptures is not any different than each other. But the particulars are different because they were presented by sages, saints, pure devotees of God, incarnations of God, for the purpose of trying to elevate their consciousness. But these people might have been in a particular guna or a different mode of material nature, which is a whole another topic. We can read the other chapter about the different modes of material nature. So sometimes people's consciousness, it's all about consciousness. It's like, where is your consciousness? In the Bible, for example, in the Hebrew population that was in captivity in Egypt for so many years, they actually didn't have any religious activities. They were slaves, right? So when Moses took them over, they didn't have any regulation. Their consciousness, they were being told, don't sleep with your daughters, and don't have sex with the animals, and things like that. It's not like God consciousness. It was just like, don't do this and don't do that. So if you look in the Bible, there's some, I think the book of Numbers, and there's a whole list of what God gives to Moses of different rules and regulations to try to regulate the process of the people to help elevate their consciousness. So basically the conclusion of that is that there are culminations of all kinds of yoga practices lies in Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti means devotional, loving service to God. Yoga, of course, means to be in union with God. Bhakti Yoga is the highest form devotion to God, of the highest yoga. And all other yogas are existent within Bhakti Yoga. All other yogas are but means to come to the point of Bhakti and Bhakti Yoga. Yoga actually means Bhakti Yoga. All other yogas are progressions toward the destination of Bhakti Yoga. From the beginning of Karma Yoga to the end of Bhakti Yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma Yoga without fruit of results is the beginning of this path. When Karma Yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called Jnana Yoga. When Jnana Yoga increases in meditation on the Supersoul by different physical processes, and the mind is on him, it is called Ashtanga Yoga. So it is Ashtanga Yoga, of course, is not a thing that you sign up for at the local yoga, Hatha Yoga club, like, I'm going to take a workshop on Ashtanga Yoga. That's not Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga was an actually eightfold system of yoga process by which, included asanas and different breathing techniques and different kinds of meditation. But that form of Ashtanga Yoga is not necessarily practiced in this day and age. The practice of what is known as the sacrifice of the age is Kirtan, what we practiced in the beginning of this class. Kirtan is spread by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as the means of realizing and achieving Bhakti Yoga. And when one surpasses the Ashtanga Yoga, comes to the point of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is called Bhakti Yoga, the culmination. Factually, Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal, but to analyze Bhakti Yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogas, which is why you have the Bhagavad Gita. It's actually very extensive, and the conclusion is very simple. Just abandon all the varieties of paths and just surrender to me. But it's important to know about these other paths as well, because you know where people are and what is what. Because see, Arjuna, he tried to lay out some rules and regulations in the beginning of why he shouldn't fight, but Krishna made it very clear to him about many truths that he had overlooked. In fact, all of his arguments were based on the body and the mind, and not on the spirit soul, the spiritual entity within. And that was the first thing that Krishna told Arjuna, was that for the, never was there a time when you did not exist, nor all these kings. You're eternal, ever existing. When the body is slain, you are not slain. So that immediately stated that the body and mind, the mind and body, that's one, the material energy, or the subtle material energy, is separate from the spiritual energy, and that it's not actually us. So, continuing on. The yogi who is progressive, therefore, on the true path of eternal good fortune, who is progressive is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. One who sticks to the particular point and does not make further progress is by that particular name karma yogi, jnana yogi, or dhyana yogi, raja yogi, hatha yogi, etc. If one is fortunate enough to come to the point of bhakti yoga, it is to be understood that he has surpassed all the other yogas. Therefore, to be Krishna conscious is the highest stage of yoga, just as when we speak of a Himalaya, we refer to the world's highest mountains, and of which the highest peak, Mount Everest, is considered to be the culmination. Right. So, once again, you want to take the direct route, you go to Tokyo straight. You don't need to go take side trips. You need to go, well, I think I'll go to New York City first, and then, eventually get to Tokyo. If you want to go to Tokyo, you take the direct flight. It is by good fortune one comes to Krishna consciousness on the path of bhakti yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called the Shamasundar, who is beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garland. Illuminating all sides is his gorgeous luster, which is called the Brahma Jyoti, so the effulgence of God. He incarnates in different forms such as Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he descends like a human being as the son of Mother Yashoda. And he is known as Krishna, Govinda, and Vasudeva. He is the perfect child, husband, friend, master. He is full of all opulences and transcendental qualities. If one remains fully conscious of these features of the Lord, he is called the highest yogi. So we kind of toss around that term yogi. I've heard it used a lot of times for, I'm a yogi, But actually the highest yogi is the one who has realized not only that they are not their body and their mind and spiritual in essence, and they are dominated by the Supreme Paramatma, the Supreme Lord, and they have an eternal relationship with God, to be an eternal loving service to God. That is being the highest yogi right there. The stage of highest perfection in yoga can be attained only by bhakti yoga, as confirmed in all Vedic literature. I'm going to skip the Sanskrit. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. That in itself could be a class in itself. Let me read that verse again. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, the teacher, the guru, and of all the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord, which is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Devoid of such inclinations, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme, Krishna consciousness, right? That is the purpose of Naishkarmya. These are some of the means for performance of Bhakti, or Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of the yoga system. So that's the end of that purport for that particular verse. I think we'll call it for the night. I recommend, if you get the 1972 edition of this Bhagavad Gita as it is, by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It's a great book to study, to read, to reflect upon the purports. And let's chant a little bit to end our class. Thank you very much. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribo. Okay, that's all for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. Namaste.